I'm Coach Ren, and this is Technique Deep Dive, Push-Up Edition. If you like my content, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share this with a friend that wants to do push-ups. I'm going to be focusing predominantly on people that are trying to get their first push-up, or maybe can already do one or two, but want to be able to do more. This is not going to be an advanced push-up tutorial. Let's get started with proper push-up technique first. This goes for any one of the variations that I'm going to show you today. The first thing you want to do is imagine that your body is planking. The push-up is a moving plank. So we want the entire body to be tight and straight as well. So I want a straight line from my head to my shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles, right? I want a straight line from there, and I want to keep it that way throughout the entire motion. What you'll often see with a lot of people is they'll come down and maybe their hips stay up, so they're only moving their upper body. Or you might see the hips lagging behind on the way up. All right, so this shows me, we'll go over more of this in a minute, but this shows me already that someone may have a weaker core that needs to be strengthened, or they just need to be taught how to do the exercise properly. And most times it's the latter. This can be a pretty tough habit to break and requires a lot of concentration. So what you can do is either use a mirror, which can be tricky because then you have to turn your head, or you can use video or have somebody yell at you every time you do it incorrectly. All right, so keeping the hips level and even going as far as to overcorrect yourself and think about driving your hips up first when you do the push-up should help to keep you from letting them lag behind. The other thing I can think of is that plank position. So when I do a push-up, I'm thinking about bracing my abs as if somebody's about to punch me in the stomach. So I'm squeezing my stomach, I'm squeezing my butt cheeks together, and I'm squeezing my quads or locking my knees out so I feel tension in my thighs. Now my body is tight, and I do my push-up while maintaining all of that tension throughout the entire set or the entire rep, resetting at the top. And as you can see, I'm shaking a little bit here because my body is really tight. Now, learning to do that is tricky. There's a few things you have to think about. So my suggestion would be to take a day, maybe a couple weeks, and think about just keeping the abs tight. Then maybe adding the glutes into that. And then finally the quads, or whatever order you prefer. If you feel like you're not feeling one particular muscle group as much as the other, start with that one. Initially, this is actually going to make the push-up feel harder. So you might need to add some assistance or do push-ups up on a countertop or something to get that feeling down first, to get your body locked in as a whole, to maintain that plank position throughout the motion. The next thing I want to go over is shoulder position. Not allowing your shoulders to shrug as you do your push-ups, keeping them down and really driving through the arms as you do these. Shrugging is something that the majority of people I see do to compensate, whether they're rowing or they're doing push-ups or overhead presses, whatever the movement is. Oftentimes people are shrugging their shoulders, and it really doesn't help you at all. It can actually hinder you in some ways. So this is another hard one. You may have to check your ego a little bit and, again, add assistance or do easier push-ups until that shoulders down position becomes automatic. We don't want the shoulders shrugging and you trying to come up and force bad reps, because in the long run, it's going to keep you from being able to do more or even get your first one. Elbow position is also important. I try to keep my elbows tucked in to about a 45-degree angle. Some people like to bring their elbows in doing what's maybe called a close grip push-up, where your elbows are in, or a tricep push-up, where it emphasizes the triceps a lot more. But 45 degrees or so is a good position. Try not to get up here to this 90-degree position. So it actually allows my triceps to do a little more work. And then I'm using more muscle to help me in the long run get more repetitions. So again, elbows point back a bit, full depth, as opposed to super wide. A lot of people tend to go super wide with their hands. This actually decreases the range of motion, so you don't have to go as far. But I wouldn't recommend that one. It can beat up on the shoulders a little bit more. So elbows in, hands about shoulder width, maybe a touch wider apart. And then again, you can use more muscle mass to make it that much easier to perform. And the last thing is when you're pushing, you're not going in a straight line. In fact, you want to make it a bit of a curve. So as I come down, I'm kind of coming forward. And as I come up, I'm pushing back a bit. Try to emphasize that a little more so you can see. But there is a bit of an angle there in my push-up. So I kind of come forward and then I drive my body back as I come up. So think about that angle. I teach the same thing with the bench press. There's a slight curve there because of the tuck of the elbows. It causes you to move at an angle. So push back when you're coming up out of the bottom. Let's go over some push-up variations. All right, so again, these are beginner level variations that I use with a lot of the people that I coach. If you're looking for advanced options, look elsewhere. At some point down the road, I may have some content on that. But the foundation of the push-up training that I do here is the assisted push-up. Okay, so you're using band tension to assist you coming up. We use super bands. These are like giant rubber bands. I have it actually tied to a chin-up bar above me. And they are just super handy when it comes to training for anything. You need some sort of an assist on a squat or a push-up or a chin-up. They are really good tools. So if you have a home gym or even if your gym doesn't have them, I recommend getting them. They're not that expensive. You can get some for a decent price on Amazon. So first up, I want to go over how to get into the band because that can be a little bit tricky. And the band tends to pull people's shirts up and it can also hit you in the face if you're not careful. So let's do this properly. So I'm going to stand up. I'm going to grab the band like this, overhand grip, two hands on it. I'm going to come through it, bring it down to my hip bones, where you'd wear your seatbelt. I'm going to come down to both knees. I'm going to lean over now as best you can. You can let go with one or both hands. At this point, the band shouldn't slide up on you, but you can secure it. And then bring your hands down and take your position. Now, I can come out more and stretch the band, get a little more tension and assist. I prefer to try to stay underneath where it's anchored. That way I know that I'm getting about the same amount of assistance every time I go to do my push-ups. And then I just gradually go to lighter and lighter bands until I can do my body weight. So, I get into my push-up position, feet about a foot apart or less, and then I go through my push-ups. Now, the band is going to help keep your butt up. We talked earlier about keeping your body in a plank and your butt from sinking down. The band is actually going to help you a bit because it is pulling right on that area. But this is an opportunity now to remember to stay tight, keep your core tight, your glutes tight and everything, so that you can simulate doing a push-up without the band. Take it out like that, or take it out from under you. So the assisted push-up, really great tool to build some volume and some strength in the upper body to eventually do unassisted push-ups. Now, if you don't have access to bands right now, or you don't want to buy them, or maybe you're allergic to latex, then incline push-up is another great alternative that you can do anywhere. You can do it at home, you can do it at the gym, you can use a bench at the gym, a countertop at home, a table, a chair, whatever it is you're using, just make sure it's sturdy and it's not going to collapse underneath you. All right, so you can start up high, so countertop might be about the highest thing that you'll want to use, and then eventually go down lower and lower. But this can replace the assisted push-up, or it can be another variation that you do in your rotation of exercises. Anybody can use it. It just works. It works at a different angle. You're hitting more the upper chest and shoulders here. But again, very good for anybody, whether you have access to bands or not. So I take the same position. Notice that I'm on the balls of my feet, on my foot. My hands are shoulder width apart. And I'm going to line myself up so that I touch my lower chest to the box or the bench or the table, whatever it is that I'm using. So if you're up here and you're touching your stomach, you're not getting the full range of motion that you could be. So step back slightly and touch that lower chest, bottom of the sternum area. Again, keep your body in a plank, squeeze your abs, butt, and quads, and make sure the whole body moves as one unit. The assisted push-ups and or the incline push-up will make up the foundation of the routine. Now there's many other variations of the push-up as well as upper body work that aren't push-ups. But one of the next ones that I've had some success using with some clientele are negatives. This is where we start at the top and we slowly lower down to the floor before popping back up either from the knees or in some other manner. So I start at the top, lock in my plank position, and I lower myself slowly over the course of 3 to 5 seconds, all the way down to the floor. This is where it gets tricky, because for the first half of it, everybody does pretty well. But once you start getting to the bottom, 3/4 down, people tend to panic. So you'll either see yourself or your clients do this and they come back up because they are afraid of maybe falling on their face, or you'll see this. So you have to be really strict about lowering yourself all the way to the floor at the same rate as you started. So whether you're at the top or the bottom, you're going at about the same pace. So again, 3 to 5 seconds down, and then come back up by dropping to the knees, pushing yourself back up, and then resetting your full push-up position. So next up is what I've been calling a game changer in my push-up training when it comes to my clientele. This is the bottoms-up push-up, or I guess you could also call it the dead push-up, because you're starting from the floor. Now, you'll notice I have some band assistance. You can do this if you are unable to do a push-up by yourself, like a bodyweight push-up, or you can do it free of assistance to strengthen the bottom of your push-up, which, like I said, tends to be a part where people panic when it comes to the negative or just general push-ups. So I'm going to get the band wrapped around my waist in the same manner as earlier. I'm going to lay down on the floor, dig my toes in, lock my knees so you'll see my entire leg come up off the floor. My butt is tight, my quads are tight, and my abs lock. And then I drive up to the top. Come back down under control, reset, rest your body, loosen up, then go through it again. Lock the knees, glutes and abs, drive up hard out of the bottom. All right, one thing you want to avoid is coming up and rounding your shoulders. Keep those shoulders back and down. I tend to do these for low reps, 1 to 3 generally speaking. Sometimes as high as 5 with more advanced people. This variation has helped people build a lot of confidence and strength at the bottom. So both mentally and physically, there's a benefit from doing these. I don't suggest doing these right away. If you're new to push-up training, stick with the incline push-up or the assisted push-up for a while before you go this low. If you have longer arms and it really stretches and it feels uncomfortable on your shoulders, then I recommend putting something under your chest, a couple inches thick, maybe like a couple of mats, of workout mats or something of that nature. So you're not getting too deep and your elbows aren't cranked way back behind you. The most important part of your push-up training will be to actually do push-ups, practicing the technique of them, doing different variations. And then we'll get into some of the fancy stuff when it comes to training lagging body parts that might be weaker, like the triceps, for example. With the foundation of push-ups in your program being set, now we can turn to assistance work If you're finding that you're not really making as much progress as you had hoped, maybe you haven't quite been able to get that first push-up yet, or you're still relatively the same in terms of how many you can get, we can start looking at some areas that could be lagging where you could put a little extra work into, build up, and be able to get those extra ones or that first push-up. Number one is to do a whole bunch of rows. So the push-up, of course, is a pushing motion. So we want to balance that out with pulling motions, in particular rows, because now it's the exact opposite or opposing muscle groups that you use for the push-up. So whereas the push-up works the triceps, the front of the shoulder, the chest, the row is going to work the biceps to a small extent. It's going to work the muscles of the upper back, so the traps, the rhomboids. And it's also going to just generally give you a balanced body. So all this pushing needs to be balanced by some pulling. So row is going to be really important. Barbell bent over rows, dumbbell single arm rows on a bench, inverted rows with a TRX or a barbell placed in a rack. Those will all be just a few of many options that you can go for to work your back and keep your body in balance and avoid injury. Planks. So the push-up is a plank. We want to strengthen the core in that position. We want to strengthen the body as a whole to isometrically contract to stabilize you and keep you from doing any unwanted motions, such as one arm doing most of the work or the hips sagging down as you come up. If you have a weak core, some of those things will happen. So strengthening your core with planks like the push-up plank, literally just holding the top of a push-up and doing that for time, making sure your abs are tight and your body's locked in and in that nice plank position we talked about. On the elbows, so you can come down to the elbows, slightly different variation, same idea though. Side planks, hit the obliques, hit all the deeper muscles in the core that stabilize your spine. And then finally, the hard style plank. This is done on the elbows like your standard plank, but instead of holding it for a long period of time and keeping a moderate intensity of tightness in your muscles, this style of plank is, for lack of a better term, a bit miserable. No, it's just miserable. So you want to hold this for 5 to 10 seconds max. And you're squeezing your body as tight as you can. You're squeezing your abs like somebody's about to punch you in the stomach. You're clenching your fists, squeezing your butt, your quads, and then you drive your elbows. You try to pull your elbows down to your toes, and you're going to feel your body light up like Christmas. So that's another variation you can use to really intensify things and strengthen those deeper core muscles to keep your body stable. Arm work. Lying tricep extensions, overhead tricep extensions, bicep curls, hammer curls. Okay, so obviously the arms do a fair amount of the work in the push-up. You want the arms to be strong. If your triceps are weak, you might have trouble finishing the top portion of your push-up and getting that extra rep in. You start working some triceps with some dumbbells, some bands, or even some barbells. You may find that your lockout, that last half or quarter of the push-up, is that much easier. And then, of course, bicep work to, again, maintain symmetry in your body. And then finally, shoulders. The shoulders are involved in the push-up, specifically the front of your shoulder, the front deltoid or anterior deltoid. So doing things like overhead presses with dumbbells or a barbell, that's going to hit the shoulders as well as the triceps. You can load up a lot of weight with that relative to some of the other arm work that you do. And it's a good overhead pressing. It's good to overhead press to also keep yourself balanced if you're always pushing here, but never over your head. So it hits the muscles a little differently, and you'll find that your strength goes up, generally speaking, with overhead pressing. Front raises, so targeting the deltoid specifically. Side or lateral raises, and then hitting the rear delts with some reverse flies. So the back of the shoulder, all of those can be good to help keep your body more well-rounded and your upper body strong. When it comes to training variables and planning your routine, there's a few things you're going to want to consider. First, the frequency of your training. 2 to 3 times per week works really well. A lot of the people that I train are twice a week, some of them 3. But this is enough time, enough frequency for you to do your push-ups, to get more exposure to the technique. So the more you practice, the better you'll get. And it'll also help you build strength while not overdoing it and keeping your body from resting completely. So 2 to 3 days per week with a day off in between, or maybe some other kind of training on other days that maybe gives your upper body a break. Rotate through your variations. So if you're training 3 days a week, one day you could do assisted push-ups. The next day you could do negatives. And then the third day you could do some easy incline push-ups. You can also double up on some of those. So you could do 2 days of assisted push-ups and 1 day of negatives, for example, but try to rotate through different variations of the push-up. On those same days, you can include some of your assistance work, such as your rows, your tricep work, your shoulder work, and so forth. Try to spread everything out. Don't try to do everything all in one day. Spread it out throughout the week to give your body a break, give it a chance to recover. Then you want to alternate between periods of high volume training and low volume training. Basically what this means is higher rep training or lower rep training. So if you're not able to do a push-up at all, then the push-up is going to be a feat of strength for you. This is strength training. So you want to treat it almost like you would trying to get a really heavy bench press or a heavy squat. You want to train with low repetitions, meaning 1 to 5 reps at a time, with the least amount of assistance you can possibly handle while doing good technique, of course. But then you also want to get more practice in. That's where the higher volume comes in. So going through a period of 3 or 4 weeks of high volume training, 8 to 10 push-ups, that's going to require you to use more band assistance or a higher surface to do your incline push-ups on. And you do that for a few weeks. Then you go to low volume training for a few weeks, doing sets of 5 or less. And that's where you really try to bear as much of your body weight as possible. So if you alternate between these two, you'll see that gradually you're going to get better. If you just try to stick to the low volume and you're just trying to do sets of 1 for weeks and weeks on end, you're not going to see very much progress. You got to spend time in both because your body will need a break from the low volume training and from the high volume training as well. So alternate between those two things. Now, if you're also working out as many as 3 days per week, you could do some of that in 1 week. You could do 1 day, you do high volume assisted push-ups, for example. Then the next day you do low volume negatives. Negatives, you don't want to do a ton of reps with that anyway. 2 or 3 at a time is great. So you do 3 to 5 sets of 2 to 3 negatives. And then the next day, maybe you do some moderate push-ups on an incline or something like that. Or you do some low rep bottoms up push-ups. Okay, so like I was talking about before, typically I stick to 1 to 3 repetitions with the bottoms up push-ups. So that's tough. That's a tough variation. So that could be your high intensity one for the week. But for the most part, you're going to want to go through periods of high volume and low volume training. Then rest periods, very important, very important. Just like any other lift or any other form of exercise, you want to be resting in between your sets of push-ups. So if you do say a heavy set of 5, you're doing some low volume training, you do a set of 5 and it's tough, give yourself a minute, 90 seconds, or even as much as 2 or more minutes, depending on how difficult it is that day. If you're resting for 30 seconds or less, you're going to find that as your workout goes on, the fatigue builds too quickly and your body can't handle it anymore. So, and by the way, if you're the type of person that does that likes to rush through your rest period where you don't even really rest at all, you're going to find that you make more progress if you spend a little more time resting and a little less time trying to beat yourself into the ground. All right. So this might change a little bit when it comes to somebody that can already do a handful of push-ups, but not much. You're still going to want to go through high and low volume periods of time. You're going to want to rest, of course, 2 to 3 times per week. If you're trying to get 10, 20, 30 push-ups, then the training's going to look very much the same. Now, you might want to do some more fancy variations of the push-up, like throwing some weight on your back or using bands as a form of resistance. Those are some ideas for that, but I digress. So that's my technique deep dive on the push-up, folks. I hope you found that helpful. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments below, or you can feel free to email me, ren@ontrackhealth.net. You can also find me on Facebook, Fortitude Training Systems, and Instagram @CoachRenFTS. You can DM me there or on Facebook. Check me out there. And again, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this.